right, everybody. Thank you for those of you that are joining us. And thanks, Todd, for that message. We are really excited to be here today. And so as a reminder, if you haven't attended some of these before, my name is Kimberly Sirota, and I am a partner of the Gout Support Group of America. And I'm here today with Gout Support Group of America co-founders Gary Ho and Dr. Chris Parker. This is our first live for 2023, so happy New Year's and welcome back, everybody. Last year, we were able to host a couple of Facebook Live programs, and what we found is that we enjoyed having themes around each of these Facebook Live events. So for some of you that were here with us last year in December, our theme was kind of around the holidays, right? Like what you need to remember for the holidays, getting your medication, making your appointments. You know, you hear from Dr. Parker and Gary, who is also a patient, about what you need to remember, how to talk to your family. And we also have blogs and different materials that go along with that. So for this year, what we're starting out with is this question that we kind of see a lot, or people allude to a lot on the Facebook group, which is, why me? Why did I get gout? And we want to kind of help answer that for you. There may not be a clear-cut answer, but there are some ways that we can kind of help you along with this journey. And so before we get into it, I'm going to ask Gary and Dr. Parker to briefly introduce themselves, and then we will go ahead and get started with some of the materials that we've sort of prepped for this, and then we will all open it up to a full question and answer for everybody as well. So if you have questions as Dr. Parker or Gary are going along, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and we will answer them. If not right away, we'll go ahead and come back and make sure that we answer that for you. Gary, I'll ask you to introduce yourself first.
Great. Well, I'm Gary, and it's great to be here. So I, co-founder of the Gout Support Group of America, but more importantly, I'm a patient. I live with gout. I've had gout since 1994. I spent 16 years trying to diagnose this disease. And when I finally was able to diagnose the disease, it was in a chronic state, super bad. But the good news is I've been pain-free, and my gout's been managed since 2010. So what is that?
Yeah.
12 or
13 years, yeah.
Going on 13?
So great.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. And I'm super excited to be here, as always.
Great. Thanks, Gary. And Dr.
Hey
Parker?
guys, Chris Parker. I am a rheumatologist that's in Austin, Texas. I developed a special interest in gout for a couple reasons. First, I thought it was a very interesting condition. So this was back in the 1990s when I was at Walter Reed. I was in the Army, and I noticed that gout, even in a massive referral center like that, really there was a lot of people doing things many different ways. And so I really got interested, and I served in the military for a total of 13 years, 4 of which were as an academic rheumatologist, left the Army in 2003 to Austin, Texas, and I've been here ever since. And Gary and I connected, hard to believe it's been that long, but it's, more than a decade ago. And we, really worked on the journey of education of our medical colleagues and patients ever since.
Great. Thank you so much, Gary and Dr. Parker. So guys, we're going to go ahead and jump right into this. And Dr. Parker, I'm going to start with you and pose this question to you on why did I get gout? Why me?
Yeah.
What are some of the factors? What is the reasoning behind
Sure.
gout?
I definitely get that question a lot, both in our forum of the Gout Support Group of America on Facebook, as well as in the clinic. It's not particular to gout. Pretty much any diagnosis that lands on somebody's plate, they wonder, why the heck did this happen to me? As it pertains to gout, there's a lot of things that I think about. I too, and Gary will probably talk about this later, I also have the strong family history. And family history is important because I think it helps you understand your own genetic predisposition. Doesn't mean you're definitely going to get it, but if you have a family like mine or a family like Gary's, where you go, oh yeah, my dad, my brother, my grandpa, and you can see the line about where it lands, and you kind of go, oh, okay, that's a risk factor. And then there are other things that you might have control over in your life. Like there are certain medications that can increase uric acid. Anybody that has impaired kidney function for any reason, your kidneys are a very important organ to get rid of waste products. And uric acid is just a normal waste product. That's it. It's just a normal, all of God's creatures make uric acid. So if that important organ to get rid of uric acid is impaired in any way, that uric acid can build up. And there seems to be more than just high uric acid that the special sauce, if you will, to have uric acid plus maybe family history plus some others, again, special sauce. We don't know everything that makes one person with a uric acid of 10 get gout and another person with uric acid of 10 not. But definitely if your uric acid level is above what we call the saturation point, we might talk more about that. But basically what all that means is if the uric acid is very concentrated in the blood, it can cause these crystals to come out of solution and really be solid state and cause gout attacks, deposition of salts in and around joints and other organs even. So let's see if I kind of covered. Oh, let me do a couple more things because people always ask. Is it more common in men compared to women? Yes. Again, all of God's creatures make uric acid because all of God's creatures have to eat. And it's not just humans. Remember, all the creatures, we eat food, take out the important nutrients, and then get rid of waste products. So that's true throughout the land. It turns out for humans and men, we, of course, don't have very much estrogen compared to women in childbearing age years. So that estrogen actually has a protective effect in women because that estrogen has an impact on the kidneys, and it kind of tells the kidney to excrete more uric acid, get rid of it. So that's a protective effect. And that makes a woman less likely to get gout as she's an adult. But as estrogen levels fall around the time of menopause, and then when she actually gets to menopause, the estrogen levels go down, the uric acid levels rise, and they can catch up. It's rare to have gout in kids, but it can happen. I do have some pediatric gout in my clinic, but it is not near as common as adults. Are those the high points that we wanted to cover, Kim? It seems like.
Yeah, I think the other one that I don't know that we really talk about too much is recent surgery and trauma to an area, and kind of how that works.
Let me cover that. I'm glad you brought that one up because it could be counterintuitive. Lots of people, doctors included, will say, well, I understand how if you were to, say, go to New Orleans and have the really great food that's there, and it's a big old party, and your uric acid level rises up, and bang, that triggers an attack. But what's counterintuitive is if, say, you land in the hospital with pneumonia or surgery, and you're not even eating at all, you're literally fasting because of all of that, and the uric acid levels fall, often precipitously, boom, it can trigger an attack. And why is that? Because the uric acid is clearly low at that time. Well, here's what happens. Our bodies like homeostasis, meaning we want to be the same temperature, we want to have the same oxygen level, we want to have the same basically everything, or within a very narrow range. And so everything's kind of cruising along fine. You may have had uric acid levels high, slowly depositing little uric acid crystals in and around joints for a long while, but never had an attack. And then any rapid change in homeostasis, infection, surgery, fasting, making your uric acid go way up, way down, any of those things can trigger an attack to happen. It's just because it's radical for your body, and it makes your immune system now see these crystals, and boom, that's a flare up. Your white blood cells will go try to munch up all those crystals and eat them up and get them gone because they know they're not supposed to be there. And they struggle to do that, and it hurts like anything when it occurs. So hopefully that helps. It's all about homeostasis. A sudden change in up or down direction can trigger an attack.
Great. And so I think the only other one that I can think of right now, and again, this is something that we see a lot on the Facebook group, is, did I get gout because I'm overweight? Did I get gout because I eat red meat and shellfish?
Right.
Did I get gout because I drink a lot of beer?
Right.
You know, if you can kind of go into that a little bit.
So diet's a part of the equation. So there are as you point out, shellfish and meats and alcohol are a lot of purines that come into our body. And so as you break those down, that's going to get broken down to uric acid. And if you have those risk factors, and again, obesity is one, diabetes is one, hyperlipidemia is one, renal impairment is a big one that I mentioned before. Add that to, say, family history like Gary and I have, and you're like, oh man, I can see what's coming. Bang! You wake up one morning and you can't move because your toe or foot or ankle or knee is swollen and angry and horrible. We've talked about that lots of times in our forums here. So diet is important, but it's not the whole story. Remember, there's all these variables. It kind of has to be the perfect storm, is how I like to say it in clinic. You know, it's not just one thing. Lots of people drink alcohol. Okay, lots of people eat shrimp. I love shrimp. I'm probably gonna ask that a little bit later. But if, you know, all of these things come together in the right person at the right time, that's really it.
Yeah. So we got a good question here. I think this fits in perfectly. Jamie asked, how about stress? What does stress do?
Yeah. It depends on how bad the stress is. I think we all have stress. But when I was talking earlier about homeostasis, how our bodies, you know, we navigate on a normal stress level day, whatever that is. But some stress is massive, right? Do you think that changes your homeostasis within the body? And what are examples? I mean, oh, how about have a family member pass away, a pet, you know, go through divorce, or good stress, just got married, just had a baby. I mean, good stress is still stress, and those tremendous things, for good or bad, have an internal downstream consequence, hormonal and otherwise. And oftentimes, good stress and bad stress, as you were talking about earlier, Kimberly, has an impact on what we eat, right? Good stress, celebration. Oh yeah, I'll have another beer, or whatever, right? Or bad stress, that might be like, oh man, yeah, I think I kind of need another beer, right? And so all of those things come together. And so that's really the story of stress. It's always stress and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that helps. But
so
stress is important.
there's another question on here that is, let's see, Todd asks, please speak to genetic tests. People are quick to conflate it as genetic based on other family members, but having it isn't always necessarily genetic when everyone is eating the same food, similar to type 2 diabetes. Let's see. And most of these metabolic conditions are tied to hypoglycemia.
You're absolutely right, Todd. So your genetic background doesn't mean for sure you're going to get gout or those other things that you mentioned, right? And it's just a risk factor, one, right? And so I don't do any genetic testing in my clinic in my patient that shows up with their first gout attack or second gout attack or anything like that, because I go, well, what am I going to do with the information? If I find a particular gene or genes, what does that mean? You're not going to have further trouble? No. If I do find it, does that mean you're guaranteed to have further trouble and I may need to use a different medicine? No. I mean, once you got it, you're now in the club. You're in the Gout Support Group of America club, right? And now, if I may, I look at everything kind of like in a very simplistic way. I go, okay, the way the good Lord plays this one is it's like 5-card stud for those of you that play poker. You cannot give any cards back. Whatever the good Lord gives you is now yours. and you have to play it out. So if gout is it, now it's up to you to manage it, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of whatever genetic
Great.
background you have.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's see. So I'm seeing a lot of questions, but before we get into some of those, I do want to go ahead and turn it over to Gary. And like I said, everybody, you know, I see all your questions coming in. We will absolutely get to them. So no worries there. Keep putting your questions in the chat. And so for Gary, what I want to ask you is when you were diagnosed with gout, or even before you were diagnosed with gout and you didn't necessarily know that you had gout or you didn't have that diagnosis, did you ask yourself this question? You know, now you can talk to how, you know, you're well managed. You haven't, knock on wood, had a flare in 10 years. But what was kind of going through
13.
your head? 13. Yay.
Yeah.
Yes. So what was kind of going through your head when you were like, gout?
Well, so thinking back on gout, when I first experienced it in 1994 at the age of 24, I really didn't believe I had the disease. So when I felt the first inkling of the first flare-up, I spoke with my dad because it was so perplexing. I wasn't doing anything short of walking across campus, going to a class, and then that night my ankle was swollen. It felt like I had a major sprain, you know, maybe a minor fracture. I just couldn't understand what was going on. And I spoke with my dad, and he said, hey, you know, you might want to go to a doctor. I have gout, and it probably runs in the family. So for me, it was genetics, though. You know, I do want to say I have two brothers and a sister. I'm the only one that am blessed with having gout, like my dad. My other two brothers and my sister, knock on wood, they're completely fine. You know, they eat anything they want, as much as they want, and there's no issues at all. But for me, it costs 16 years. It cost me 16 years of my life. You think about that. I went from 24 years old and then I blinked and I was 40 years old before I was able to receive a proper diagnosis. And during that period, it was pretty dark. You know, it started out not so much so, but as we all know, as you study gout, you understand that this disease is a progressive disease. It's always battling, right? It's always wanting to take ground. So if it's not moving forward, then it's moving backwards. It never takes a timeout, ever. And that's what I learned. And within the 16 years, it was so frustrating because I asked the questions, why me? You know, what kind of cards, you know, like to Chris's point, what kind of cards have I been dealt with? My God, this is stupid. This is horrendous. No one is going through what I'm going through. Nobody understands. I feel completely isolated. I felt depressed. And then, you know, as the years went on, I was ridden with anxiety. You know, I was to the point where as a young man, you know, in the prime time of my life, I couldn't walk around. You know, I was limited in my mobility. And when I would hang out and be social with my friends, I'm always known as Gimpy, right? Mr. Gimpy. And there's Gary the Gimp. And, you know, all that was in love and fun. But, you know, deep down inside, it was like, man, that sucks. You know, I don't want to I don't want to live through this. But I got to tell you, when I met Chris in that was the breaking point as my rock bottom experience. I've experienced enough pain. At this point, I was experiencing probably 4 to 6 attacks per year, right? And if you know, I think, Chris, you can, you know, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think anything over 2 or so per year, it's like on the range of chronic condition, isn't it? It's, you know, and for people that suffer and live with gout, we have this threshold and we think, hey, I've only experienced 3 attacks this year. I'm good to go.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, it's bad, right? Your condition is actually pretty bad. You should not be experiencing 2 or 3 attacks per year. And by the time I met Chris, I was on crutches, using a wheelchair. My face had blown up. I'd been using pain management to manage my disease. I didn't understand what being proactive was, and how that affects my gout condition. There are no cures. I see questions even today as tonight as Chris was talking. I saw a message. I saw a question about, am I going to need to take allopurinol for the rest of my life? I think about that. I'm like, yeah, there was a point in time when I actually asked that question too.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to be a pill popper for the rest of my life? And I'll tell you what, I will happily take allopurinol because now I understand the science behind it. I understand why gout comes on,
Mm-hmm.
why a flare comes on. I understand how important it is to either take allopurinol or it could be Uloric. Those are the 2 main medication. At this point, you guys, we don't have a cure. If we had a cure, I'd be cheering. It would be great if we had a cure, but we don't. And I would trade, to take medication and to gain back the 16 years I lost. That's huge,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's huge. If I could do it all over again, I would take, if I was offered maintenance medication, I'd be happy to take it. I'd be happy to take it. Are there some side effects? Sure. With any medication, there's going to be some side effects, but you're going to have to weigh it, this medication might make you slightly sleepy during the daytime. For some people, for example, is that a reason not to take it? I don't know. You're going to have to ask that question to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I would say hell to the yes.
Yeah.
And I'll take it at night because then it'll help me sleep, right? Right?
Yeah.
Well, with allopurinol, sometimes it actually makes me a little itchy. I'll get a little rash here and there. And so is that a reason to stop? For me, I had to ask that question. For me, hell to the no. I'll keep taking it. And I'll use the cream, right? Steroid cream, Chris, that you've given me. And I when the symptoms come on, I'll use it. So I've learned how to adapt. And honestly, with the maintenance medication, I've regained the freedom and the quality of life that I think every single gout sufferer deserves. I've regained everything back, man. I'm going to be 54 soon, and I'm the healthiest that I've ever been. I live my life to the fullest. I eat what I want. With with some restraints. Moderation, right, is the key to everything. But I am free to do whatever I want, and so I've been able to turn that dark experience into a hopeful experience, and I want to be able to give that back and help others that are living with gout. And I just know that when you type in gout on Google, I know you get a gamut of information from, eating this or not eating this and doing that and drinking this and, drink 2 gallons of water a day. There's just, everyone has an opinion to that. But I've decided in 2010 that I would build a relationship with a gout expert, and that would be a rheumatologist. And for those that are, thinking, should I see a rheumatologist or not? I would say yes. Go see a rheumatologist. You're a primary care physician. There's a statistic, and Chris, you can tell me if this is kind of accurate or not, but rheumatologists, experts will tell you that, when it comes to your doctors, there's like an 80-20 rule. 20% of them understand gout, and the other 80%, they're just taking a dart and throwing it with blindfolds on. They're just guessing. I saw a comment earlier that said, hey, my primary care physician says that my 8.5 uric acid level is in the normal range. And I would, as a layperson, I would tell you that if you have gout, 8.5 is
Yeah,
way too
that's way
high.
too high.
And you're in the saturation point.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before you get an attack. You see, it's the simple understanding of gout. Just that right there tells me that there are plenty of health professionals out there that just lack the basic understanding of gout.
And it's not that
But
they're not. Let me
with all
chime
that,
in on that one.
yeah,
It's not that
yes,
they're not smart guys, right? I mean,
right,
there's a whole bunch of people out there that are very smart, but what I tell my patients is no one can be an expert in everything, right? I mean,
right,
we all know that. The world is too vast. So if you're, seeing a doc, whether it's a primary care doc or a podiatrist or a rheumatologist or whatever, it doesn't really matter. If you're getting good results, well, you probably don't have to change. I mean, you're like, yeah, you solved that. But if you're seeing one of these kind of doctors and you're still having flare-ups and you look at your labs and you go, well, God, there's a real disparity. Here's these gout experts talking about you got to get uric acid less than 6. Mine's 8.1. I don't understand why it's in the normal range and my doctor's happy with it. And these guys are saying that's way too high. Then that means, oh, somebody doesn't know something. I have something else to learn. Either my primary does or I do, or, I mean, there's a real disparity. That's the beauty of life, is there's a lot to learn. And that's why, as I see it, there are specialists because somebody needs to be the expert in a certain area. And as Gary mentions, rheumatologists are the gout experts. Now, if you go, well, within the world of rheumatology, are there some guys that are much more knowledgeable than others? Yes, because some rheumatologists are way interested in lupus and others are rheumatoid and others are gout guys. So you want to get to somebody who's knowledgeable, interested, and then they can help you if you're needing help.
Well said.
That's great. So Gary, I love, your story here of taking the question of why me, why did I get gout, and turning it into okay, I have gout. What am I going to do to change my life to be better? And then even further, once your gout got under control, you and Dr. Parker coming together to put this group together. So I, am a believer of positive manifestations, and I think that you guys definitely embody that. So I appreciate both of you kind of talking to that a little bit, but we do have a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead.
Bring it.
So the first one, so this is a little bit more of a statement, but I think Dr. Parker, you can talk a little bit to it. So Nancy said that she got gout after a combination of medications that seems like it may have shot down her kidneys, and she doesn't have anyone in her family that has gout.
Okay.
And so because of the kidney, the medications in the kidneys, what is that relationship with gout?
Well, this is going to be review. The kidney is the most important organ in the body that gets rid of uric acid. Okay, so 2/3 kidney, 1/3 bowel. Remember, both of those are getting rid of waste products. But if you go, oh, I don't have any family history, I don't have any other risk factors, but boy, my kidneys got all kinds of sick because, and you say some medicines or whatever, then I go, okay, well, those kidneys are important. And if you, because of sick kidneys, had your uric acid levels go up so high and for so long that you develop gout, now we're going to have to deal with that. And the most obvious question that I would wonder about here is like, oh man, can we just fix your kidneys up? I mean, are they fixable? Because maybe they could just go back to the good old days of working great. If that's not the case, then as Gary mentioned earlier, most people, they do the best they can with diet and nutrition, but to be really successful, you want to take a medication to really regulate that uric acid and keep it in a space to prevent flare-ups.
Yep. Great. So the next question here is from Jonathan, and I'm going to start with Dr. Parker on this one and then kind of send it over to Gary for his experience with this. So there's two questions here, and this one, boy, oh boy, do we hear a lot. Do I really have to be on allopurinol for the rest of my life? As a recently diagnosed patient,
I hear it all the time too.
Can I play around? Yep. Can I play around with pausing the daily pill, taking and measuring the uric acid levels on my own with a home test kit? And two, if home testing is a potentially good idea, does insurance typically cover it with a
Yeah.
prescription?
Okay, well, let's do the first question, then we'll get to the second one. Do I really have to take this lifelong? And what I tell patients is very similar to what Gary said. I tell them, no, it's a quality of life drug. You can do whatever the heck you want. If your life is better with it, by all means, keep it. If your life is better without it, get rid of it. Do whatever the heck you want. Most patients they do it just like Gary said, like, oh my God, my life is way better. Having a gout attack suck. I don't want to go back to that. And so they decide to keep it. I like it. I'll leave this question with this analogy because I think it's very fair, very fair. I tell people that ask this question in my clinic, which is a very common one, just like you said, Kimberly. I say, listen, if you're the kind of person who brushes your teeth with toothpaste, meaning you use fluoride, now that's a chemical, right? And so are you brushing your teeth to prevent cavities, or you're brushing your teeth because you have cavities? Well, most people are trying to, like, I don't want cavities. I go, yeah, it's a quality of life thing. You do it because you're trying to prevent troubles. Now, you could stop and you could probably get away with it for a while. Sooner or later, though, if you're a gout sufferer, to use the analogy, like, oh, your uric acid are going to go up. And the downstream effect may be flare-ups. And so I just say, listen, if you want to run that experiment, feel free. And now I'm kind of working my way to the second one. If you go, well, I've got beautiful control of my uric acid. My uric acid's always less than 6. It's in that beautiful, sweet 3 to 6 range. I haven't had flare-ups in a long while, like Gary. And now I'm wondering, what if I didn't take it? But I would say, by all means, check your uric acid. Home meters, I don't know that they would cover it. It's pretty new technology. The world of diabetes has been doing this for decades, but the world of uric acid and gout is pretty new, so I doubt they'll cover it. But you could get a home meter on your own dime and check with your doctor in the lab, and that's a covered expense in the lab, right? And kind of see where you're at. So if you stop your allopurinol, uric acid rises up, say it's in the 7s or 8s. I doubt you'll flare up immediately. But if you keep it up there, I think you're playing with fire. And if you go, hey, I'm going to put it back in, see what it does, goes down, now you're running your own science experiments. And you can do with that what you want. But in my clinic, at least, I'll never bust somebody's chops and say, you need to take your medicine. Because ultimately, I want them to decide. My life is better with it. That's why I brush, Doc. I don't want cavities. That's why I floss. I want my gums healthy, all that.
Yep. I love that, Dr. Parker. And Gary, so you've talked about that you do take your allopurinol every single day, and you also have a home test.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I absolutely use my home test kit because I just realized that when it comes to gout, it's really it's very scientific. If I know from studies that if my uric acid is above 6.8, I think it is, that basically means that I am now saturated and my body is slowly depositing these uric acid crystals around my joints and my soft tissue.
Right.
Even in my spine, it could be in your heart, really anywhere in your body, it could deposit.
Mm-hmm.
And just because I do not feel a flare right then and there does not mean I'm in a good place, right? Because like I was saying before, gout moves forward or you're pushing it back. It doesn't take a timeout. It's always doing something. It's always fighting for ground. And we have to really learn to be proactive. For myself, it took a bit, right? It took a little convincing because 16 years of it took 16 years of crystal buildup for me to get to the point where I was experiencing excruciating pain. And for those that have experienced a gout attack, the pain that I'm talking about. The pain where if you pull a sheet over your toe, you're screaming, right?
Right.
the pain of when you turn on the fan like I should because it's hot in here. But if I had gout flare and I turn the fan on, oftentimes the wind that's gliding past my affected area, my toe, would make it throb and produce pain. That's insane. You describe that, you tell that to somebody who doesn't have gout, they will think you're exaggerating. You're a big
Right.
exaggerator.
Right.
Stop it, right? That's ridiculous. But it's true. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I think many gout patients are in a position to where we're not very good at pushing ourselves and focusing to be proactive. Just like you used a great analogy, Chris, brushing your teeth is to be proactive.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to like reacting to things. And so we will sit there and wait until we are in so much pain that we can't figure it out. We can't think straight anymore. And so now we're forced to do this, right? We're forced to take this pill.
Right.
And I got to tell you that, everyone is going to have to answer that question for themselves. But for me, taking a pill a day every morning, I take my allopurinol, and regaining my quality of life, man, that's hands
Yeah.
down. I mean, if you're living in pain and someone says, hey, there's a way for you to live pain free, how much would that be worth
Yeah.
to you? As a gout patient,
Powerful.
it would be worth a lot, right? A lot. Would it be worth $1 million? I don't know, but a whole lot, right? And so I would just say that, again, everybody will have to answer that question for themselves. We are here. We've been here from the very beginning, and our goal is and always to present and offer educational materials to our members, right?
Mhm.
We just present you the facts about gout and you guys make the decision. We have many members who started out just questioning, do I need to take my medication daily? What does it mean for me to be proactive with gout? And then they're on the other end of it now. They see light.
Yeah.
They are experiencing no more pain. So we have many members who started out over here and now they're over there.
Yep.
But I also want to say this: the journey to being pain free, if you've been living with unmanaged gout for years, is not going to be overnight.
Right.
It's not going to be overnight. It's going to get darker before it gets better. Okay, so just remember that. Remember that. When you start taking a medication, like Chris is saying, your body doesn't like a whole lot of change. Well, when you're sick, you need the change. But if change comes, your body will probably flare even more. And that's what happened to me when my uric acid level went down and my body started to clean house, right? And melt away these uric crystals in my body. I was experiencing more flares. I actually wanted to quit. If you remember that
Yeah.
conversation, Chris,
Yeah.
I was like, this
This
is
is horrible.
insane. I'm experiencing more flares now than I did back then, and I don't know what's going on. But you did me a favor, man.
Mhm.
You did me a favor by telling me this is actually very normal, Gary. It's going to get darker before you see the light, and just walk with
Yeah.
me. It's going to be okay. So I would just tell our members out there, embrace the journey, you guys. If you're still asking why me, maybe it's time to move beyond that. Accept the why me and let's embrace gout and let's figure this thing out. We can figure it out together. You
Yeah.
can have gout and be pain free at the same time. Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Sure.
And I think that I'll put in there too that gout is a chronic medical condition.
Right.
And anything else, if someone has heart failure or they have high cholesterol or something like that, and they are taking daily medication as a preventative, that for some reason is more of a norm than with gout because there is this stigma associated with it, right? There's a lack of understanding. And so that's why we like to have these Facebook Live events and put out the materials that we do because, so I'll say, I want to acknowledge on here. So Tracy said, I don't want to be in this club.
Right.
LOL. Tracy, we don't want anyone to be in this club,
I agree.
right? We see you, we understand you,
Mm-hmm.
and this is why we are here, to make sure that you are empowered to take back, your health, and that gout is a serious chronic condition that can be managed.
And I got to tell you, if I could chime in on that one, Kim, because I hear that one all the time. Now, if you get to know me, you're going to understand I'm a very, very positive person. So bear that in mind when I say this. But compared to so many other conditions that I treat, I realize you don't want to be in this club, but it's a way better club to be in than a lot of other things. I mean, I think about rheumatoid arthritis. That's a much tougher club. I can't fix that like I can fix gout or lupus or scleroderma or some of those things. I mean, gout, you're like, man, I could. Just look at Gary. I haven't had an attack in 13 years. I mean, this is one that if you want to be proactive and really embrace it, this is something you can get your arms around and really make it good. So don't feel too bad. I mean, this is one of those cards that the good Lord gives you. That's like, well, I can handle this card. Yeah.
That's great. So I'm going to jump around a little bit with the questions. Again, I'll make sure that I get to all of them, but for the flow of this conversation, I think this next question kind of fits in. So this is from Jamie, and this is another thing that Dr. Parker, I think that you probably hear a lot is, she says, I have medication anxiety, which has kept me from doing exactly what Gary is describing. Coming off a 12-week long attack in both knees, will be going to a rheumatologist as soon as I get back home, afraid of going through another bad flare-up.
Yeah. All of our brains, Jamie, you don't really have an anxiety problem. You have a normal working brain that says, boy, that sounds scary, right? I do not want to repeat that. Everybody's brain is going to try to avoid pain. That's not weird. I think that if you're going to see a rheumatologist and you share with him or her your experiences, we should devise a plan, in my simple mind, not just prevention, but we know, as Gary points out, and it's totally true, that it can be bumpy until you get to that beautiful smooth ground that you're after. So I try to organize a strategy to get somebody where I want them to go, meaning no flares, but also have tools in the toolbox ready to go that you don't have to ask for. You already got them at home to initiate immediately if you start having a flare early on. Because I don't want bumps in the road to be big bumps like you just had, Jamie. 12 weeks is just a massively long time to be active flare-up. But if you go, oh man, no, I got stuff at home that works for me. You guys can devise whatever that is. And then as soon as I get it, bang, I turn that thing off quickly. Good. And then whip it out again if it comes up. And so that you're en route to being like where Gary is, and many of our other members are. We're like almost 15,000 people. They're all not flared up like that all the time, right? Many people were, and now they're like, no, I take my medicine. I stay out of trouble. I check my uric acid. I keep it controlled because I don't want to go back to those bad old days. I hope that helps, Jamie.
Yep. So Dr. Parker, we had Jackie asked a question here in response to that, and she asked, if a flare lasts more than a few days, is it really multiple flares?
Maybe. To me, I don't care. That's just semantics. I'm like, you're getting beat up. I don't care if it's one followed by another or all one big one. I don't care. I do not care. I just focus on the big picture. If this thing is hot, Gary's heard me do this a lot. I use a fire analogy. If there is fire going on all over the place, we got to get that thing cooled off. And if you try to put out the fire and there's still smoldering embers there, and you walk away and all of a sudden, it's back on fire, sure. It wasn't Jamie that asked. It was, we just asked this one. You could call that a second flare because it wasn't quite the same. It's kind of left over from the previous. I don't really care. All I know is you got to get that thing under control and then keep it gone. And then when all those uric acid crystals are gone, there's nothing to flare, right? Now you're just doing maintenance. You're just brushing your teeth so you don't get cavities.
That's great. So this one I'm going to ask you, Gary, in your experience with this. Another thing that comes up on the Facebook page a lot is to address tart cherry juice, celery juice, and other, I don't want to be on meds for the rest of my life, so I'm going to take these options, these different supplements that are coming in, and the evidence or maybe lack of evidence behind it. How, you know, what is your experience with that, Gary?
So I think, with old wise tales, I think they're all based on a little truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with the cherry juice, eating celery, yams, right? You name it, they're most likely not harmful. And who doesn't like cherries,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I'll eat cherries. Why not? I would just say let science dictate you. If you want to just try to rely on homeopathic options to try and manage your uric acid, then go for it. But check your
Yeah.
meter or go to the doctor and get it checked so that you know. We know scientifically that your uric acid moves on average of 1 to maybe 2. Chris, you can,
Yeah, that's about right.
you can let me know 1 to 2, up or down on average, right? So if you're in the eights, let's say you're averaging 8 or maybe 9, and you're like eating as an athlete, like you're all you're doing is eating lettuce, and you're staying away from like meats, and yeah, I don't know how you would be able to do it, but let's just say that you are just fantastic at your diet. You're drinking tons of cherry juice and eating tons of yam. The best that you can do possibly is move your level 8 down to maybe 6 at best, probably 7,
Yeah.
because it averages more, maybe 1 versus 2. And even at 7, you're too high. You see what I mean when I say let science
Right.
dictate your action? If you're at a 9 or a 10, well, I mean, scientifically, I can tell you that diet alone will not be able to get your uric acid level below 6. That's just scientifically speaking.
Yep.
I remember talking to Chris
Mm-hmm.
about this because I was very proud of my diet coming in when I first saw him. I said, hey, man, my parents bought me not only cherries, but these dark, cherry
Tart.
extract. I
Yeah.
mean, they're tart and they're dark and they're powerful, man. You know, and Chris is like, hey, awesome, man. If you want to take it, you know, uh, in addition to the medication, great. If you think that you can do it on your own without the medication, fine. I already knew. I spent 16 years trying to do it without
Mm-hmm.
medication. So I knew I couldn't do it without it. So I've been through that journey. I lost a decade of
Right.
my life exploring that question
Right.
right there. And like I said, earlier, if I could do it all over again, I would. Because boy, man, to regain your 30s again, hello,
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm at 50, close to 54, if I can redo my 30s again and regain it with health, my God, sign me up,
Right.
right? So that's just my
That's great.
experience.
Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Gary. So, Dr. Parker, this next question will be
Yeah.
for you. This is from
Okay.
Kendrick. And Kendrick is asking, what is the difference between Uloric and
Yeah.
allopurinol?
So those are definitely the two most commonly prescribed pills in the United States and other countries to lower uric acid. They both work on the same enzyme in the body, and that enzyme is called xanthine oxidase. And xanthine oxidase is the enzyme responsible for making uric acid. So if you take either medicine, it inhibits that enzyme, so you'll make less uric acid. Very easy to understand. I like to think of it like a screwdriver. So you stick that medicine in there like a screwdriver and just twist it until you get that uric acid right in the sweet spot. Now, using that same analogy, I like to think of allopurinol like a standard screwdriver. Fits in there. You twist it just fine. The Uloric, think of it like a Phillips. It fits in tighter. It's you don't need as much milligrams to really get that thing turned down, but they're both working on the same enzyme. And it also, when I'm teaching other doctors on the subject, it helps them understand why you don't use them together. I go, you don't really screw screws in with a Phillips and a standard, right? I mean, that wouldn't make any sense to put them both in there and start twisting. Pick the one that works, right? Now, either one can work, and so most of the time, people will choose what has been around the longest and the safest and least expensive, quite frankly, allopurinol. And that's generally the starting point. And if for some reason either someone doesn't tolerate that medicine, it's a pretty well tolerated medicine, so it's uncommon, or somebody just they make so much uric acid they can't get that uric acid in that sweet spot, then take out that screwdriver, if you will, put the other one in, start twisting that, and that would be the switch to Uloric. Hopefully that helps answer.
Okay. Yep. So Kendrick, he had a follow-up question too, is can you all talk about Krystexxa?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. And certainly Gary can speak to it as someone who's actually received it. So his insights are going to be great. But what I'll give you the basic science on this thing. So Krystexxa is not a chemical. Okay, it's not a pill. It's just a protein. And as you know, if you swallow a protein, you're just going to digest it. So for this one, you have to infuse it in somebody's body. It's an IV medication. And what exactly this protein is an enzyme. The enzyme is uricase. It also goes by the name pegloticase in this case. I won't get into why. But think of it like, okay, it's just an enzyme that breaks down uric acid. So if I infuse that enzyme into somebody's body, it quickly breaks down this uric acid into a different salt called allantoin, and your body easily excretes that out of the kidneys. It's not a very soluble salt at all. And so you can really clean house with this stuff. One infusion every other week. And you can literally make somebody's uric acid go to close to zero when you give them this particular medicine. So it's definitely a more aggressive strategy. And it's all, put one more thing in and then let Gary talk about what is it really like to be on it, because it's really powerful when he shares it. So it's not permanent, meaning we don't keep people on medicine like Krystexxa. As a rule, if somebody has a very big burden of disease, meaning lots of uric acid in their body, they've had it, like Gary had it for more than a decade, 15 years of getting beat down, it would take me a long time to really get all those crystals out using pills. And so if somebody's really sick, just like if someone's really sick and I put them in the ICU because they have a heart problem, say, you were mentioning earlier, Kimberly, if you have a heart problem, you're like, you might be so sick you're going to the ICU. If you show up into my doorstep with very bad gout, been present for a long time, same thing, you're very sick. Then I go, I'm going to put somebody on a medicine like Krystexxa, one infusion every other week for a period of months, not years as a rule, 6 to 8 to 12 months. The average in the United States when you're outside of studies is around 9.9 months or 10. But basically everybody shows up at a different length of time needed, but you could really clean it up fast and then put them on allopurinol or Uloric for maintenance.
Right. So I would say, Krystexxa is another tool, right, in the toolbox to fight gout. In my case, because I lived with gout for 16 years unmanaged, there was a lot of buildup, and it was pretty difficult to get my uric acid below 6. It was just very difficult. And at the time, Krystexxa was not FDA approved. I actually went through as a, trial patient, I think phase 2 of the trial of that medication. It took me 9 months. What was that, Chris?
I think we're in 3 by then. Phase 3.
Oh,
phase
3. Okay,
3.
yes.
Yeah.
Phase 3. And my treatment was 9 months, twice per month, 6 hours per treatment, right? So you're sitting in the chair for 6 hours at a time. It's the medication slowly dripping into your arm. And, it's immediate. my level went from, I think, close to 10 down to virtually 0
Mm-hmm.
within that first treatment. It was overnight. And guess what? Because of the major changes, guess what came right afterwards? Major
Right.
flares. Oh my God, the house is on fire,
Yeah.
man. For the next 3 months, it was insanely painful, and I got to the point where I almost quit. I almost stopped the treatment. But again, you acted as my
Mm-hmm.
cheerleader and reminded me that this is part of, the plan, right? This is very normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell you, by month 4,
Yeah.
my tophi was shrinking. By the 9th month, when we stopped the treatment, all signs of gout had disappeared from my body. And at that point, I was able to take the maintenance medication, and I've been able to successfully push the flares away from me and regain the quality of life. All that to say is that we have tools in our toolbox
Mm-hmm.
here. Living in America, we have options. Yes, it's expensive, you guys. It is expensive. You're going to need to talk with your insurance company. Cristexa or Horizon, the company that owns that medication, I believe sometimes they have grants, there's programs and whatnot that
Yeah.
you
The
can
great. I'll
get involved
chime in
with.
on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yes.
in my line of work, I try very hard to not think about the cost of anything. I just look at it like, what does this person need medically? I have one question. I'm their advocate medically. And when I have an expensive medicine or a cheap medicine, if that's going to work great, I'm going after it. Cristexa is expensive, but the company that makes it, like all the companies that make expensive medicines, they know it's pricey. And so they have strategies in place for
Mm-hmm.
patients to afford it. So it is actually, I'm happy to report, rare in my clinic where I, for some reason, cannot get it. Because as Gary mentioned, there's either grants or there are other avenues or it's covered on insurance. And insurance don't want to pay for it unless I say, like, hey, listen, I tried the other stuff, it's just not working. Then they're like, oh, that's what it's for. Okay, fine. And so patients usually, although they always ask, what's the cost of this thing? I go, I'll tell you what, I'll have my insurance work on this, and then she'll check it out and tell us both in the next 3 or 4 business days. And most of the time, it's a copay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's how it was for you, Gary, but usually
Right.
it's a copay.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Mine was a little bit better. I went through the trial,
No,
so it was free
that's true. It's free.
for me.
That's a good deal.
And
But
actually, so I'll say
That's a
here,
good deal.
we'll have some, more materials coming out about
Yes,
clinical trials for people that are interested
that's
in
right.
Yeah.
getting that. So stay
Yeah.
tuned for that. So I'm going to do a few like rapid fire
Yeah.
questions here for you guys. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. But so Jackie says that she has her first appointment with a rheumatologist on Monday. She insisted on a referral. She had flares in both feet.
Jackie.
When should I be getting blood tests done, during or after the flare?
I'll throw it out there. Yes. Get them before, get them after. The more data you can get, the better. Because data is valuable, and you and your doctor kind of work out a timeline for that. So expect to get labs and then act on the data. That's the key. Get the data and act on it.
Right. And I would add, I hear you talk about this
Mm.
a lot, Chris. When you're flaring, oftentimes when you get your blood test,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes your uric acid level is lower during a flare. All right. So make sure that you don't just discount the fact that you might not have gout because it's low,
Right.
but you're looking at a fat red toe and it's throbbing,
Right.
and you show signs of gout, but just because your UA level is low during an attack
Yeah.
doesn't mean you don't have gout.
Yeah, it's only
right?
one
So,
data point.
that's correct. All right. Mm-hmm.
So this next question is from Nancy, and there was another question on here. I can't find who finds it, but how much allopurinol, Gary, if you want to talk about how much you take a day, and
Sure.
Dr. Parker, what the starting point is usually and what that max
sure.
is.
So it took me a little bit to dial in. I'm at 450 milligrams per day with my allopurinol. But in the past, I actually did take Uloric too, and I like that medication. And Uloric, like Chris was saying, you don't have to take, the dosage is a lot lower. I think,
You're 80, I think,
it's,
right? Yours?
anywhere from, 40 or 80.
Yeah.
Mine was 80,
Wow.
and the reason why I switched over to allopurinol is because, unfortunately, it was because of the insurance. And then once I was on allopurinol, I just got used to it. So I stuck with it. But if I had a preference, my personal preference would be, I think, Uloric. I think my body reacted way better
Mm.
to that. But right now on allopurinol, it's 450 milligrams. A lot of our members will say, "Hey, I'm on 100 milligrams." I'm not a doctor, but I would say 100 is probably a starting point. You'll need to kind of continue to check your blood with
Right.
your levels with your doctor and adjust it. Right, he'll adjust up or
Right.
down accordingly, and it's all based on
Right.
science.
Yeah, I'll totally echo everything Gary said. It comes in a 100 and a 300 milligram tablet. And if somebody asks,
Yep.
how much do I need? I say, I can't tell by looking at you. You got to get your labs and let's act on the labs. 100 would be a starting dose. And so I factor in lots of things when I pick a starting dose. Not to go into all of that detail, but I don't have to fix it immediately, but I need to get somebody started. So we oftentimes will choose either a 100 milligram tablet or take a 300 and just cut it in half. That'd be 150. And then at least in my clinic, I'll just check labs monthly and make adjustments until they're in that sweet spot, like a target between 3 and 6 is a pretty nice right in the target area. And so when they're in there, then I go, okay, this is your dose. Let's say it's 300 or 450 like Gary, or 600. And then I go, great. Now I just check once or twice a year to make sure they stay in that sweet spot and don't drift a little bit. You mentioned earlier, Kimberly, what's the maximum dose? Well, the FDA has a max dose of 800 listed in their package insert. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody needs more, I'll give it to them, because some people are just big guys or gals. And here I am in Texas, and they're like, hey, listen, they probably don't buy their clothes off the rack, and I shouldn't expect them to, need only 300 or 450. I mean, they're just big people. So I just use whatever I need for success.
Right.
Yep, great. So I again want to be cognizant of everyone's time, but I just want to say, Todd and Bobby and some of these other questions, chat on here. We see you. After this, we will pull any questions that we didn't answer, get answers to them, and post them on the Facebook page, so you could have those answers to it. What I do want to say, in kind of wrapping this up, is
Can I say one thing on that note, Kim? I want
yes,
to just not only add to that, but please sign up for our, and you can help me with the exact language here, our kind of blog group or whatever, because we can answer those
Email.
and then just email those, because I want your questions to be answered. I greatly value you guys logging in, asking your questions. These are important questions that other people benefit from. And so if people are, getting the emails, and you'll get all those answers and other people's questions as well, their answers, and in a proactive fashion. And as we do more of these, we'll make sure we send them out to everybody on the email list. So that way you can be like Gary and help lots of people.
That's right. Go visit our website, you guys, and sign up for our, give us your email, and so that we can communicate with you guys.
We'll send you the answers.
So
yes.
I just put the Gout Support group's website in the chat. And
Thank
so
you.
what we will ask is, if you sign up for that, we don't spam you, we don't sell it. And
we
that
don't
information.
sell anything. We don't sell anything.
Right. Yes, but we won't sell your email addresses or any of your personal information, anything like that.
Nope.
But what it does do is, when we come out with new resources, which is at multiple times a month, you'll be the first to know, and to get that kind of digest of what's going on there. And some exciting news, we are going to run a 5-week kind of raffle drawing here. And the prize for that, each week we draw, will be an at-home uric acid test kit meter.
Yay.
So for anyone who signs up within the next couple of days that participated in this Facebook Live will be entered into the drawing automatically, and we'll announce it on the Facebook page. So definitely keep your eyes out for that, and join our mailing list. Again, you might get 1 to 2 emails a month, if that, especially with some of the new resources. Additionally, some of the more exciting resources that are coming out is a checklist for you to take to your doctor with you, especially those of you that haven't gone to a specialist yet, with the questions that you want to ask your doctor, the stuff that you need to have ready and prepared to talk to your doctor about. We have blogs that are coming out. We have videos that are coming out. We're really excited for it. Please continue, to post on the website. Please reach out to Gary, Dr. Parker, or myself. Again, our information is in this Facebook group, and it is also on our website, Gout Support, goutsupportgroup.org. And we will be doing this. Let's see. Jackie just said, how do we do it? Join a mailing list. So if you go on to goutsupportgroup.org and enter your email address into the, at the bottom there where it says sign up and subscribe to our newsletter, you can do that there. Right. And we will be doing these quarterly. So our next one will be in about 3 months. We'll put out a notice for it, and we really hope you all will join and continue to support. And again, we appreciate your support and your participation in this. And just want to thank everybody for being here, and to have a great night. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Thank
you,
everyone.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Kimberly.
everyone.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks. Bye, guys.